Hi, and Merry Quiltmas. I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Allison. Now that Thanksgiving is over, we're in the Christmas spirit and excited to spend the holidays with you.
We'll be joining you every Wednesday between now and Christmas, along with our sponsors, Bernina, Northcott, Reliable, and The Warm Company, to share festive holiday decor and great gift ideas.
A Christmas quilt-along, handmade ornaments, and cute ways to personalize your gifts.
So grab a cup of hot chocolate and snuggle under your favorite quilt for this merry celebration.
We're starting to decorate for the holidays and get out our Christmas decor, so one of the first things we're going to show you is how to make this cute tree skirt out of a pre-printed panel.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. If you are like me, right after Thanksgiving is over, you start decorating for the holidays. And you may be thinking, there's no way I can finish a tree skirt in time. But with this fabric panel, Spruce Mountain from Northcott, we're going to show you how to finish one so quickly. Here's how. So this panel print from Northcott has everything you need for your tree skirt. It includes the front of the tree skirt printed, the instructions, and comes with these extra cute labels that you can add to your holiday gifts and quilts. The first step is to layer all of your layers together. So first, we've put our backing fabrics right side down, and then a piece of batting. We're using Warm 100 from the Warm Company, which is so thin and soft, so your tree skirt will drape really nicely under your tree. And then we've added the panel print, which is the tree skirt top. Now we're going to baste it in place. So you can quilt your tree skirt any way you'd like. We're going to give you some tips today for quilting a straight line grid across your tree skirt. So what we've done is initially mark perpendicular lines across the tree skirt to use initially for our quilting. So I've sewed along the initial line we marked on the tree skirt, and now I'm going to show you a great tool that the Bernina machine has that helps you get consistent straight lines sewn across your tree skirt. So I have added on the machine this seam guide, which just slides into the presser foot, and you can tighten it to hold it in place. And I've set it for one of the largest distances you can get, which is about 2.5 inches. So I will have 2.5-inch lines spread across the tree skirt. So what I will do is lower the presser foot and line up the seam guide with that original line, and then I'm just going to start sewing. Another great feature I love about this Bernina machine that's so helpful for quilting is that on the foot pedal, if you rock your foot back, it pushes the needle down so that you can keep both of your hands on the quilt while you're quilting if you need to stop for any reason and reposition. One more helpful tip when you're quilting this tree skirt is the Bernina, when you lower the presser foot, lifts up a little bit so you can still readjust and align things perfectly before you can push it all the way down and then get quilting. So using our seam guide, we quilted straight lines all the way across in one direction and then went back and did across the other direction to form this grid. Now if you wanted to stop here and just make this into a cute scalloped table topper, you definitely could. But we're going to show you how to turn this into a tree skirt by cutting a circle out of the middle. Okay, so now we're going to find the center of our tree skirt, which we would have quilted right through. And we have a 6-inch circle template that I'm going to find the center of by folding it in half twice. And we have this circle template available for you to download. So then we'll just align it right with the center. And then we're just going to trace around it with an erasable marking tool. So now that we've drawn our circle, we are going to cut a slit through one of the lines we just quilted and then cut out that center circle. Now just remember, wherever you're cutting this slit will most likely be in the back of your tree. So choose the motifs you love the most to appear at the front. Okay, we're also going to cut out the tree skirt now. Now I'm going to show you how to bind the tree skirt using bias binding. So we're going to make bias binding for our tree skirt. Since the tree skirt has so many scalloped edges, using bias binding, which has a little bit more stretch, will help us get around those curves more easily. So we need about 200 inches of bias binding. So what we've done is cut a 24-inch square of fabric diagonally. Now we're going to move this piece and align these long straight edges and sew along the seam. Now we're going to mark lines across our piece of fabric every 2.5 inches. Once you've drawn lines all the way across your fabric, you'll have some excess, which you can just cut off. Next, we're going to fold our corners up and offset the corners slightly, and then align all of your lines across the fabric. You should have tails on both ends sticking out. Then we're going to pin the lines together and then sew across the seam. Once you have the seam sewn, we're going to cut off the strips on those marked lines. And what will happen is you'll just get a continuous piece of binding that's the right length to bind the tree skirt. So to prepare our binding strips, we're going to fold the strips in half and iron them in half. I'm using the reliable OVO travel iron, which fits in the palm of my hand easily so that I can maneuver it over the binding without burning my fingers. This iron is really handy to have sitting by your machine in case you just need to do a little bit of pressing as you're sewing. So we're starting to sew our binding strip on the inside straight edge we cut so we get a good start.
When you're sewing around the curves, go slow. Stop as often as you need with the needle down and reposition as needed. When you get to the inner corner, stop with your needle down and just keep sewing. No need to miter the corner. The stretchiness of the bias binding will accommodate for the extra fabric needed in those inner angles.
So after we sewed the binding to the front, I turned it over to the back and hand sewed it in place. Now sometimes with bias binding, what can happen on these curves and scallops is you'll get a little bit pucker or it'll pop up a little bit. Don't panic. All you need to do is take your iron and a lot of steam and just run it over the binding and it will lay perfectly flat. Using this fabric panel, just adding quilting and binding made this project come together so quickly. I can't wait to get home and put this tree skirt under my tree. I had so much fun making that tree skirt and I cannot wait to put it under my tree at home. Just another idea for you, the center circle that we cut out of the tree skirt, which was already quilted, I used the leftover bias binding we had to just bind it, and I think it makes a really cute coaster for the holidays. So if you don't want to throw that scrap away. So now we're going to show you how to make a really fast gift idea, which is perfect for a hostess gift. So we're using the Festival of Lights collection from Northcott, which we're showing you a cute panel print right here. And then also Steam-A-Seam 2 from the Warm Company, which is a fusible web product. And we're going to show you how to make these tea towels.
Yeah, so this is a great fast gift idea, or if you just want to decorate for the holidays, like jazz up your own kitchen, you can use the fusible Steam-A-Seam 2 to easily decorate some purchased tea towels. So here you can see we've fused some fusible onto this panel and just cut out the strip. And then on this other tea towel, we just cut apart some 2.5-inch squares. So if you have a charm pack, this would be great, and you could just fuse them down to your towel.
Yeah, and the great part about Steam-A-Seam 2, and here's what it looks like when we cut it off the roll. It is a no-sew fusible, so you do not have to sew after you fuse things on. It is permanent, you can wash it, and everything will stay in place, so it's really great for those fast gift ideas you just need to whip up quickly.
Yes, definitely. So we're going to show you how to kind of put your tea towel together. So you can see on this piece, we've gone ahead and fused the fusible onto our fabric. You can see our fabric on this side. And so it has obviously two sides of paper, and then the adhesive is in the middle. So with the adhesive on the fabric side, you can kind of peel this paper off. So we're going to come over to the ironing board here, and you can just peel your paper right off. And then the nice thing about this fusible is it's repositionable. So if you kind of stick it down, and this is an exaggeration, but if you're very crooked on your tea towel, you can pick it back up and kind of put it in the right spot. So one main thing you want to be sure is that you do not use steam when putting your fused piece onto your fabric. So I have it positioned here and it looks pretty straight. I'm just going to go ahead and iron it down.
Yep, and the Steam-A-Seam 2, you usually press in place for about 15 to 20 seconds, and you can use any heat setting. So you'll notice a lot of fusibles you buy will say use like a medium heat setting. This one completely stands up to heat. That's why it's no-sew, so you can use any heat setting that works for your iron.
Yeah, it's really great, and it's so simple and fast. It's great. So we have this fused on here. It is no-sew, but if you want to kind of stitch it down, or if you're going to if you know you're going to wash it a lot, can't hurt to stitch it a little bit. Yeah. So we're going to do just a simple blanket stitch around the edges.
Yep. So blanket stitch is one of my favorite applique stitches to do. You can also use a zigzag stitch, a really skinny zigzag stitch. Also with the because this is a no-sew fusible, you could easily just do a top stitch around and leave the edges raw, and it would hold up just fine to washing. I think this just gives it a nice finished touch. And the great part about the Steam-A-Seam is that it will not gum up your needle, so while you're sewing through that glue, it won't cause any problems with thread breakage. So there we go. I'll finish this over our next little commercial break. So we're going to go to making a handmade ornament. We're going to show you how. How cute is this ornament? We love that the square in a square block design lets you frame and fussy cut a cute piece of fabric right in the center. We played with the Polar Hugs collection from Northcott, and it was so cute to just put right in the middle. So if you have any classic block designs you'd love to see turn into an ornament, let us know in the comments. You may just see one of them in an upcoming video. So now we're going to talk about all exciting pressing tips. So a lot of people, I think, rush through the pressing of their seams because they're so excited to sew, but actually accurately pressed seams just help the sewing and quilting process go so much more smoothly.
Yes.
So we have 7 top tips we're going to share for you today.
Yeah.
So the first is understanding the difference between pressing and ironing.
Yeah, so pressing, you know, you're going to kind of put down your iron and pick it back up and continue to do that. And ironing, you're going to kind of move it around in a kind of smooth motion.
Yeah.
And you want to kind of be aware of whether you have bias edges or where your grain is at on your fabric for if the fabric's going to stretch or not.
Yep, so the reason we say press your seams is so you can pick it up and down. If you're rubbing that iron across your fabric, you're really going to distort the seams and the fabric. So the second tip we have is to set your seams. So before you press a seam, you know, open or to one direction, you just want to press the iron over the seam before you do any of that. It helps the stitches just sink down into the fabric so that when you do finally press it open, it's really flat and smooth.
Yeah, and just make sure that your seams are really set and that your fabric is going to be very flat then when you press it open.
Yep. Our third tip is to let your fabric cool. We know you're always in a rush to get back to your sewing machine and sew, but letting the fabric cool will just help the seam just lay really flat and not move and distort.
Yeah, because it becomes very flexible, obviously, with heat, and even when you're using steam, then it's just even more susceptible to moving.
Yes. So our fourth tip is to press to the dark side. So we have an example here. We're showing we sewed two pieces of fabric together. One is red, one is white.
So we're going to flip it over so the dark side is on top, and you can kind of fold this back, and you're just going to kind of press toward the dark side, and this will make it so that your dark fabric doesn't show through to the light side, because if you were pressing the other way, that red could kind of show under your white fabric.
And there are some cases we know where you can't, you know, totally always press towards the dark side, just depending on like where your seams are lying. If you have to press towards the light side, you can help eliminate some of that shadowing you would see by just trimming your seam allowance a little bit skinnier, maybe to 1/8 of an inch, just to eliminate how much of that seam you're seeing through the fabric.
Yeah, and you know, it's really important, you know, when you read those instructions that you're taking into account the pressing directions they recommend, because that'll really help you when putting all your blocks together.
Absolutely. So our next tip is if you have pressed something in the wrong direction, which happens all the time, before you decide to press it the other way, you want to kind of return the seam to its original state. So you will press it closed first.
So yeah, you'll just kind of revert back to where it was before you initially pressed it to just try to make that seam flat again, and that'll make pressing it then in the other direction, in the correct direction, a little easier.
Okay, so tip number 6 is to press seams open when you need to. And I know a lot of you are saying, no, never press your seams open. We hear that all the time too, but there's some cases where pressing your seam open will actually help just the sewing and the quilting just work way easier.
Yeah.
So we have an example here. This is a little present block you will see in our upcoming quilt along quilt we're doing, but sorry, I'll let you show the back.
So we have a lot of seams. You can see right here when we have a lot of bulk here. It kind of adds a big lump back here.
Yeah, there's 4 seams intersecting just with the triangle squares and all the pieces coming together. That is a lot of pieces of fabric just ending up in one point. So if you're going to try to sew or quilt over that, it's going to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, so this is when pressing open is great. So you kind of want to open up your seam a little bit. I tend to just do it with my fingers, and I know you can use different tools to kind of help you hold that open. But you're just going to kind of, I like to keep my fingers here and kind of open the seam up as I go, and then just kind of go all the way to the end. And then that will help eliminate the bulk and make sewing this block to the next one even easier.
Okay, our last tip is a tip for sewing really long straight seams. You saw Allison demonstrate this earlier, but when you're pressing straight seams, you press it with the right side up facing you. I know a lot of times when we press seams, we have the right side down, but in the case of straight seams, you want to press with the right side up. So Allison can do that one more time for you.
So I especially think that this is helpful because, you know, in my experience, it gets a flatter, crisper seam because you're, you know, pushing it open in the way that you'd actually use it in your quilt. So I just think I'm kind of a fanatic when it comes to like making your seams really flat. So I think this is really helpful.
So those are our 7 tips for great pressing, and hopefully this helps make your holiday sewing a lot easier and stress-free. So now we're going to introduce you to our quilt along for the season. So we're giving you block 1 instructions today. So you can see what the entire quilt along quilt looks like here. So there's some fun blocks coming up. But we did want to say, if you are in love with the peppermint block, which we do too, you can just finish this one block and add binding, which is so simple. It makes a cute little coaster, or you can add it into other projects you're piecing. It makes a great gift idea.
Yeah, it'd be really fun too if you wanted to use just those blocks and make either a table runner or a quilt.
Yeah, a whole peppermint quilt. That would be so fun. So now we're going to share a great idea for personalizing the gifts you're giving for the holidays.
Yes, I'm a huge proponent of adding labels to your quilts. I know many people are. So we have these fun labels that actually came on the tree skirt panel. They're already printed on there, so they're ready to go. All you need to do is write on them, and we have a great tip for writing on any label you have. So this is the micron pen. And you can use these on any fabric, and it comes in different weights, and this, I tend to like to use a thicker weight because then it doesn't get caught in the grain of your fabric. So you can see on this label, I went ahead and filled it out. You know, you can put any information you want on there. You could put the year or put a little message, which is a fun idea. So once you write on your label, you can just take your iron and press it, and this will help set the ink into your fabric.
So it's totally washable after this. It will not run. The ink won't run and get on your quilt. It will not come off with the washes. So this is like a permanent way for you to add just like your special mark to the back of a quilt.
Yeah.
And so we did want to share, we have added already a label to our quilt along quilt because we love adding labels to things, and this one is really cute, and I just added the date and what the project was from, and I just sewed the label into the binding when I was sewing the binding on so that I didn't have to worry about that, and then I just turned the other 2 raw edges under and just hand stitched it in place so that it is secure on there.
And you might have seen us using this small reliable iron to iron our text onto our label, and Lindsay can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it is the travel iron, and it's also a steamer, and it has a garment brush attachment, and it comes in a cute little silicone case with a little water pour so you can steam things. It's the perfect size to take on the go with you if you're traveling for the holidays, or you plan on doing some sewing, or you just want it for your clothes. It would make a great gift idea for the sewers in your life. So we will be back next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time to share a cute casserole carrier project and block 2 in our quilt along.
And we'll also have another ornament pattern for you guys and have a fun use for your holiday sewing scraps.
So we'll see you next week. Bye.